Why, hello, you beautiful souls. How's it going? We are back with another Spiritual Experience Wednesday, diving deep into it. Um, just going to do a little sound check. So, we're redoing this one because last week.
Just gonna do a little sound check.
Oh, sounds like we're good. So, despite everything being the exact same setup as it usually is, for some reason the sound wasn't working last time. So, we're going to dive back into this one a little extra refined, a little bit more potent. So, we're diving into the awakening of the mind. Now, when it comes to the spiritual, we can say, catalyzing moments or awakenings in this path of liberation, of enlightenment, there's kind of three main ones that take place. And we're going to talk about this, these next few in this series of Wednesday experiences. And we can think about it kind of like, the inverse triangles, where we have the bottom up representing the physicality, that masculine aspect, the dense physical matter. And the point where it's all conjoined is up top. That's the mind. We can also look at the spiritual sense, that eternal nature, that divine flow, as the inverted triangle. And that connects down in the gut. It's our timeless wisdom. It's that intuitional knowledge that even Western science has now stated is outside of time, yet it can see the future. So that's because our spiritual self is infinite, boundless. We're outside of time. We're outside of the linear playscape. And unifying the two is what we would call the soul, a composite of both spirit and matter. And that represents that middle point, which is the heart. Now, in the process of awakening and in my journey, I went along this really unbeknownst what was happening most of the time. I was kind of just asking my inquiries, doing my due diligence in my daily meditations, and really diving deep into these, I guess you would say, like primordial questions. And it brought me to these moments of awakening, of freedom, of liberation, of truth. So this series and the next few, and then all the ones coming from this, are really stemming from this little dance and journey. But the most important one that I see nowadays is the liberation of the mind. So we're going to be starting with that one today, because purely there's so many things that get caught up in, you could say, like roundabout loops in the spiritual path. You can get caught in so many cul-de-sacs. You can really just repeat and keep having an infinite onion, but there's always a problem to solve. But at some point, there are level ups where you release and you step up and out of a certain density. Yet, if you don't have the awakening of the mind, it makes it really difficult to do that. Because the more that you are identified with the mind, the more that you're identified with the body, the more spiritual experiences that you gain, the more, we could say, tools that the mind has and the body has to keep you trapped, to keep you a victim to the physicality, to the material world. So, we could say that my original journey, like the first awakening that I had, was in 2010, and we'll definitely be talking about that one. And then throughout college, when I graduated in 2013, I was always just kind of in introspection. I was doing a meditation, but it wasn't as disciplined. Now, from 2013 on, minus, I would probably say, like mid 2021 to like early 2021, or like early 2022, I was doing really consistent daily practices with a lot of journaling and a lot of writing. So I went through the notes to get ready for all of these ones, and it's always a beautiful moment to see the thoughts that were going on back then, the seed thoughts, the origins of the meditations and what I was receiving, and just the whole journey of it. And when it comes to the awakening of the mind, I can say that it started really when I was 26. With my birthday each year, I always have like a little mantra or something that I like to explore with life. And 26 was very much so like, okay, let's dive even deeper into this whole what am I concept. What is this reality? And what's my participation and my role within it? I had already had a lot of different spiritual experiences in terms of some psychedelic journeys and some self-initiations with ayahuasca 3 times. And I had received a lot of information, but I really didn't know what to do with it. So I needed to unpack it on that personal level. So from October 2nd, 2013, all the way through May, I was really having these like high end questions, creme de la creme inquiries in my meditations about, what is resurrection? What is liberation? What does it mean to be in discipleship? What does it mean to be liberated? What is the soul? What am I? What is this? Who am I? Who am I supposed to be here? And, as random coincidences work, I was getting introduced to a lot of different Eastern teachers. And there was one video, before I even mention this, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj is one that really helped me bring a lot of things together. So I highly recommend him. It's not that known, but he tapped in. Now, this video was more mainstream that I listened to, and I was just cooking, and it was Muji, and it was just another satsang that he was doing. And all of a sudden, he just said, the mind is not real. And it aligned perfectly with my inquiry for that day, where I was like inquiring about the nature of the mind, like what is the inner experience witnessing? And when that phrase hit, it just broke something through where I started to experiment with that. I entertained it. I was like, okay, I'm going to listen to that, because that is, also my deduction from what I've seen, is that the mind isn't real. It's a suggestion at best. It's something that is witnessed. And this brought me into doing some experiments from May to early June at work. And for me, I have a lot of like negative, super like hypercritical negative thoughts back then. And it was one of those things where I'd always want to speak up in the workplace. I'd always want to, be a little bit more open and raw and just express like what I'm actually feeling in that moment. I had really good suggestions, but I was always dealing with a lot of egos in the room, especially in leadership. And with this experiment, I was like, okay, well, if the mind's not real, then I'm not going to listen to these suggestions or these moments where the mind says, no, be quiet, don't speak, don't stand up, don't raise your hand, don't do that. And I did this for 4 days. I started to notice it, but it was like a 2-week experiment. And within that 2-week experiment, I had gotten a raise. I had gotten kind of like a project implemented at work. I had troubleshooted a conflict with a notoriously tension-filled coworker. Great resolution with the kids that I was like coaching, teaching, and mentoring, looking after, and big breakthroughs with parents. Good stuff at home. Like life was just in a really sweet pocket of just like flow and harmony. And that kind of got me shook, because it was not only just the experiential moments of knowing of like, okay, the mind's wrong. It was saying this, yet this happened when I opposed it, when I did the opposite. Well, what else, is it wrong about that I've been holding on to? So we, I would say we fast forward a few weeks. It is July 25th. And that's when this awakening experience happened for me. It's really hot, so I'm just going to wet the whistle a little bit. It's a blueberry, orange, Galia melon. If you haven't had Galia melon, it's delicious. It's like a honeydew melon and a cantaloupe, and it's just like liquid honey. It's delicious. It's so hydrating. And then a little bit of homemade nut milk. Thanks, cashew. But back to it. So it's July 25th, 2017. It's a beautiful summer day. I was actually going outside to smoke a bowl, and I had the bong ready, bunch of ice in it, these crazy filters. It was like I was waiting for this experience. I was just like after work and things, and I was just like, I just need to decompress and unwind and just send off for the nightcap. And I went outside, and kind of like the sun was setting. It was beautiful colors in the sky, and I just put it down on the table. And then the story of the Buddha, I had seen a documentary. It was like an animated film version of the story of Buddha in like summer 2012. So again, like years ago, it just randomly popped in my head. And it kind of just played it back from the beginning. And then it kind of focused on when he was sitting under the tree before he reached nirvana, and all the temptations that would come up to him. And in the cartoon, he just kind of sat there with his eyes closed and was just like, no, no, thank you. No. And in that moment, I had my own version of like, man, that's really funny. He was just like, no, no, no. Mm-mm. Mm-mm, mm-mm. And when I had that no, 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 and like that internal like wagging of the finger, I was instantly pulled into a meditative space and state. Everything was gone. It was nothingness. It was that void. It's like a womb. There's no light. It's empty, but it's so full and dynamic. You can just feel the energy, and it's just blackness, infinite depth. And it was here where the mind instantly got louder once I recognized something's a little funky here. What's going on? And then it just went intense. Thoughts it was probably like the second loudest it's ever been in my life. The first is with my initial spiritual catalyst. For a tale for another day. But yeah, the mind just started getting incredibly busy. It got louder, and the thoughts were happening faster and faster and faster. And then the no, no, no came back. And then from this point, it really shifted to continuation of thoughts. Things would cease, be that pause and that just stillness. And then it would repeat again. There'd be another wave of thoughts. It started going through fears. So it was just thinking all the worst things that could happen to me, my family, my loved ones, my cat, my dog at the time. And again, no, no, no. Doubts, rage, anger, and it started showing like gore and violence. And I was just getting glimpses. And for me, I'm usually more of like an auditory and just like I guess you would say like sensory, like knowing and feeling. And I was just getting glimpses and little visuals of things that were just like incredibly detailed and just absolutely disgusting. Very like horror movie gore stuff, like to the nth degree. And again, it was just no, no, no. And I'd come back and then it would all just go. So these waves continue to happen, and it was going into shame. It was guilt. It was all the past experiences, that I had, made myself small and all the things, and just like my own insecurities and lusty gusty things. It started getting hypersexual, and same thing with the visuals. And I could just like even feel the energy of just like lust, temptation. It was crazy. But again, no, no, no. So each thing kind of continued this way. It went into more past aspects of just where I've been wronged and hurt and holding on to the pain. And this one was really intense because there's a lot that's happened in my youth and in my formative years of just like really deep betrayals. So it was just judging and just so negative and just essentially just a bunch of shit talking to so many different people and things and just very isolating. But again, that no, no, no. And this is when it kind of took like a little bit more of like an intense, darker energy where it was all the negative self-talk I've ever told myself and then some, like the worst types of stuff. Went into like judgments of myself and all the past and the wrongs that I've done. And at the end of this one, it started to get a little bit more of the sense of just like, oh, remember you tried to do it once, you can do it again, in terms of the suicidal ideation. And this was a very firm, like, no, no, no. So then the volume kind of increased. It got a little bit more random, a little quirky. And this is where it was more like self-talk. It was just like internal thoughts, dialogue, just bing, 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 going back and forth, but all using I. Every thought that was presenting itself to me, witnessing it, it was using, well, I could do this, well, I can do that, I can do that, da, da, da. And it was just a conversation. And those that know me in the personal life, not on camera, I mean, you could probably tell, but chatty Cathy. So I love to chat. So this was just like chatty, 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 chatty. It wasn't really anything bad, but it was very distracting because it was actually pretty entertaining things and concepts and themes of life and lessons that I had learned and all the different spiritual concepts, da, 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 da. But again, it was no, no, no. So this is where the imagination started to get really wily and, funny jokes and all these different things of just more entertainment. And it was the entertainment and kind of like the levity and the lighthearted stuff that it was still getting louder and quicker. And it caught me for a moment, but again, it was the no, no, no. So it's another pullback. And this is when it just went into silence. It was pure quiet and calm. There was still a very, I guess you would say, strong sense of just witnessing. And then it went level 7,000, like a bunch of arcade noises, jackpot sounds, coins falling. It was crazy. And like I saw flashes of color from like the peripheral vision. And I laughed. Like I remember laughing pretty hard at that. And again, just no, no, no. And then this is where it just completely went even. If darkness and blackness and nothingness could get even more nothingness, it went even more nothingness. And I saw like a little speck just like out in the distance, like a little like dot of light, and it was getting closer. And as it started getting closer, it started to have more of a shape. It was rectangular. And I don't know if you've ever seen the old Superman movies where they trap like the Kryptonians or they're trapped in glass. It's like the space glass and they're just floating around like this little 2D square, this little window pane. It was like that, but almost like a full length mirror. And in the image of it, it was myself. And when I looked at it, it got pretty close. It was about like maybe an arm and a half distance. And looking at myself in the reflection eye to eye, and then it just shattered. And then I was met with silence, pure quiet. There was still the nothingness. And then I started to hear the wind in the tree. And as I opened my eyes, the sun had already pretty much set. It was still that little depth of darkness and a little bit of that light in the distance. And I heard the breeze and the rustling of the leaves. And my eyes just welled up. It was such a sensory explosion. It felt as if I was listening to the first time. And even shortly after that, I had seen those, videos of someone with a cochlear implant and them turning their hearing on, and you can just see how overwhelming that it is for them. It felt like that. That same energy I felt in those videos, I was experiencing in that moment as hearing for the first time. Because it was stillness. There was no inner feedback going on. It was completely quiet. And I'm sitting there in this moment thinking that it's been 20 minutes. 2.5 hours had gone by. My partner, she technically ex-wife now, but my ex-girlfriend at the time, or fiance maybe, I don't know, I have to look at the dates on that one. She had gone to sleep. So I was just left out in the darkness, And I'd sat there and contemplated in the sense of just witnessing. It was like awestruck, I guess is the perfect phrase for it. And I just sat there just listening to the sounds. And I lived kind of near like a somewhat active road, and there was no cars on the road. It was just the leaves and the wind. And it was like listening to music. It was, pretty trippy if I had to be so cliche about it. But with this, I went inside and just kind of like frantically writing notes, just all the things that I remembered like in the moment. But just documenting just like how at home this felt, how this was familiar. And in the processing of this throughout the next few days, I came to understand that, and this is just teachings of my own that I do for my students and things, but like I'd come to understand that you're actually kind of going through the gates of temptation for your own beingness. Each center was what each kind of like pattern or theme of thoughts was. And the ones that had a lot is kind of, it reveals where, I had a little bit more work in certain centers. But it was going through each and every one from the bottom up. And then that final breaking of the identity shattered. And that was it. Now, does everyone go through something like this for their awakening of the mind? Yes. It may not be experienced as like a void or nothingness, but it comes back to that same concept of you're witnessing something and you return. You witness and you return. You may be entertained and immersed in it, but you return. It's that practice and that application of seeing and recognizing that you're witnessing and being taken away by it. And every time you bring it back, it gets further and further and further and further away. And after this awakening, it was about 2.5, 3 weeks where there was really no mind. And that's where I fully felt and knew that we come and operate from an intuitional knowing. It's just a knowing, and the mind is an echo. And as funny as it is, in this experience, I started laughing at like old school cartoons. I started getting introduced and, seeing these random videos that would just bring moments of just like recognition and just humor to the whole experience, because there was like an old cartoon that came on as like a commercial or something like that, and it was the character looking at the angel just like themselves and the devil that looks just like themselves, and they were bickering, and that's what I was experiencing when it was probably around like the third eye, like throat area, and when it was just going back and forth ping pong and that in and of itself was just brought so much more a deeper presence to just all the different subtleties that life is kind of always saying, like, Easter egg, hey, this is how it actually is. But yeah, I was in that kind of like baby Buddhahood state for like 2.5, 3 weeks. And it's a very raw state. Again, you're just like a baby again. You're learning how to listen. You're learning what hearing is, the energy that it is, tones, all the different things, volumes, sounds that are natural versus not, and man-made and clunky and electronic versus just the wind and the breeze and the stream, babbling brook. And it was really trippy because I was still going to work at this time and I was still doing all the things I needed to. And that was even more of a confirmation of just how little we actually need the mind. It was good for mathing, but even then, it was when we're in that intuitional knowing, it was just grabbing the right amount of sheets of paper. It was grabbing the right amount of this, pens, and passing things out, and not even really being in that state of analytically using logic all the time. And that's one of the detriments to school, is because we get taught how to use this tool, but we don't really get taught what it is. And then we over-identify it with the teenage experiences of just puberty, because we get so intimate with the body and all the different subtleties kind of just, the horse runs about. But we never get taught to, again, bring it back. So we could see it as like at like 3 weeks, again, I'd been introduced to some videos that was talking about, people saying, oh, I've unawakened myself, I've unenlightened myself, I'm still thinking in turmoil. And all these different teachers were talking, and they would just say, like, poppycock, that's ridiculous. If you really figured it out, that you don't know what you're talking about, just go sit down and think about it some more. And for me, that came in the realm of, again, the work experiences. Anytime there was something negative or some like the sip and tea gossipy energy, just kind of like there's always like a dark cloud in a workspace, I feel like. And there was interactions with those people, and then some moments in just personal life of fear and things that brought back more negative mind. And it was incredibly potent when the mind and thought forms returned, because there was an instant recognition that the intimacy had changed, the relationship completely different. You close your eyes, you hear a thought, it's within the body, you think it's you. And I can identify it with, like, imagine your thoughts are in the room with you and they're just talking and walking around. That's most people's state. Sometimes they're right up on their ear. You can feel the wind or feel the breath, smell the breath on them. And they're incredibly intimate. But when the mind had returned in this state of like work and things, it was kind of more like it was outside the property lines, behind the fence, like yelling like this. So it was real quiet. Didn't have much pull. And it was easily dismissed. Kind of like, and that no came back. That just remembrance. And it was a good opportunity to laugh. Got a good chuckle out of it. One of those good laugh cries, because it's just like, oh, duh. The whole point of awakening in these experiences is to really just further establish your position. It doesn't mean the plate drops. And that is one of my biggest issues with phrases like ego death. If the ego dies, you're not experiencing this human experience anymore. Because if we want to call the ego anything, it's just the body. It is the animalistic nature of the flesh. It is the primate. Excuse me. Yeah. And when we go through these experiences, what it leads to is an opportunity to recognize what is real and what isn't real in our experience. And that's when the entire aspect of the internal feedback just becomes a suggestion. Oh, body's hurting, but I'm not done with my run, so I need to keep running. Oh, it really wants that food, but you just ate and you're trying to eat better. Oh, self-critical thought, don't do this, don't do that. Actually, that's your medicine that you need to express because you were born here to radiate that. There's just so many aspects of the game that change to the point where that primordial question of who am I that brought me to this threshold of this awakening and this introspection and entertaining, like, well, what if the mind isn't real? What does that mean about me and my experience? That it now brought this next question of what am I? Well, if I'm not the mind, what am I? If I'm not the body and I'm just witnessing the body, then what am I? And that will lead us into our introspection next week, the awakening of the heart. A little bit of a teaser for you. Um, but yeah, I hope that you enjoyed, those that are watching. And as always, feel free to leave questions, comments on the IG. It's in the description, or even just emails. But I highly implore, just like I point all my students to, and only a few have done this, where it's sit with the mind until you recognize you're no longer it. That's a simple call to action. And through this video, you have some hints and ideas of what that's going to mean. So I hope you follow up on that. And if you do, let me know what's up. I'd love to hear about your experience. The ones that I know about that have taken this offering, and others just that I've met throughout in life, the few, it's pretty similar. As always, everyone has a different checklist of things and lessons they're here to learn and wounds that they need to overcome. But that aspect of the venture and the return, until it just gets so far away that that attraction and that pull to thought forms just snaps. And then you're left with the witness. As always, may the fruit of knowledge offer a seed, and in that seed may your love, will, and intuition give life and nourishment, for a tree shall grow, and in its shade may you find peace, and offer peace to all whom ask. Namaste. I bow to the divine within you. I hope you enjoyed. Definitely share. Definitely send me some inquiries if you got any. And I look forward to diving into the kind of next aspect and introspection of the what am I and the awakening of the heart, because that is another beautiful one. And I wish you well. I love you so much. Peace.